Welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast, proudly presented by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. If you're like us and passionate about hunting, spearfishing, and many other outdoor-related pursuits, with an eagerness to fast-track your learning, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hey legends, welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. This one's for you if you've ever had dreams of chasing the mighty speed goat across the Great American Plains. We are talking about Pronghorn, we are talking about Antelope. We're going to be continuing our US-based mini-series where we're talking to Austin Atkinson from Huntin Fool, breaking down and showing you guys the opportunities to hunt each different species in particular states. So this one, we're going to be talking about Pronghorn. We're going to go through each state, talk about, which states are the trophy states, which have great opportunities to go and just chase a pronghorn, add one to potentially a deer tag or an elk tag, and what the draw opportunities are like. We'll then jump into our FAQ section where we answer your listener questions. If you have an FAQ, please send it through to info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ. Or equally send us a message on Instagram at the Twin Elements account, Aidan Doomsness Outdoors or James Doomsness Outdoors. We'll jump in. Venture Hunting and Outdoors is Australia's premier hunting retailer, with the mission to give Australian outdoorsmen and women the resource they deserve. Venture started from a team of passionate hunters and has transformed into a community. Through group events, top quality gear, exclusive deals, and expert guidance, Venture is more than a hunting store. Check out their website today to see what epic deals are available. Well, hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. Today we continue our mini-series with Austin. We're going to be jumping into all things antelope, breaking down a few characteristics, the hunting season and dates, and then jump into what opportunities you've got, whether you want to go and hunt this year or whether you want to hunt in a couple of years, whether you just want to get out there with a tag or whether you want to shoot that buck of a lifetime. So we'll welcome Austin back to the podcast. How you been, mate? What's been happening?
Thanks. Yeah, things are good here. It's warm and dry and we're ready for hunting season.
Let's go. What's been happening this week in the office? A fair few results have come out.
Yeah, a lot of draw results. So it's always a fun, exciting, and depressing time of year. There's always those of us that think we're going to draw a certain tag and then we don't. There's those that drew too many tags and they have to decide what they're going to do. And there's people scrambling to find over-the-counter opportunities or landowner tags or whatever because hunting season is right around the corner. So it's been very busy.
Yeah, perfect. Aidan and I are actually lucky enough to draw antelope tags in Montana, which we may discuss in this podcast. So we're super excited now because we've got antelope, deer, and elk. Hopefully we can maximise our time there and tag out on all of them. But it should be. I've never hunted antelope either, so it should be a super fun hunt from everything I've heard, and I'm actually really excited to try and get some tips from you in this podcast.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. The antelope are a fun, unique species, so it's something that should be on everybody's list, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially with the going off the deer tag, I don't know if antelope is going to be a huge draw card, especially for some of our listeners. I think it's going to be more of a hunt that people are going to add to a hunt, whether it be a deer hunt or a sheep hunt or something like that. They're already over in the States. I don't know if too many people are going to just going to go over there to chase an antelope, but you never know. Like I know personally, for myself, my dad, he like is addicted froths, as we say here in Australia, antelope, and he really, it's like the top of his hit list. He wants to get over there next year with Aidan and I, and for him, it's sort of the one species that he really wants to actually target. So I'll definitely be taking some notes this podcast and see what opportunities there are to try and get him a tag with only 1 year of potentially buying some points at the later end of this year, and then whatever he can apply for next year. So I'll just get you to sort of break down, I guess, their sort of characteristics and when they rut, maybe some sort of hunt tactics that you've found to be successful. And yeah, go into, we actually spoke briefly at the end of off the podcast last time about how they actually drop their horns every year and regrow them. So yeah, super keen to hear about that. So yeah, just cover everything, all aspects of pronghorn.
Yeah. Now the pronghorn antelope. I mean, they everybody's got a different name that they like to call it. Technically, it's not really an antelope as we're used to when you talk about the Middle East or Africa type antelope. It's not an antlered game. It's somewhere in the middle. So the scientific name is Antelope americana, which capra is kind of like a goat. Americana, it's an American pronghorn is the technical name, and this is the only place they exist. So that is a very unique species, and oftentimes we call them speed goats because they're very fast. Oftentimes they can sprint over 60 miles an hour for a short period of time. So we call them speed goats, but they're not really a goat, and they're not really an antelope. So a pronghorn is a better term. But what's interesting is they don't have antlers and they don't have horns. They're somewhere in the middle. So oftentimes they'll call them hairy sheaths. So a sheath meaning like an outer portion that's made up of keratin. It's made up of horn or hair, if you will. It's like a consistency of a fingernail. So they will shed just the outer sheath every year. And that's usually as it comes into winter for our time. So late November, early December, they will shed off just that outer sheath that's hollow, it's black, and it'll fall off. But underneath, you've got about a 5-inch core that's a bone core, just like it would be on a horned animal. And it's covered in hair. So as that old sheath pops off, falls on the ground, they will immediately start to grow a new layers of hair that just kind of lay into each other. So if you see an antelope in the middle of winter in December, January, you're like, what is on its head? It's like a white, hairy puffball. Well, that's the hair growing alongside this bone core. And they'll grow that from late November until about the end of May, first part of June, when that hair will just start welding itself together and it'll become pretty hard, but not near as hard as a horn or an antler, of course. But very interesting animal, and they'll do that every year. And sometimes when you're hiking around, you can actually find those sheds, those sheaths laying on the ground, but where they are pretty thin and made up of just keratin, they disintegrate very fast. The animals eat them, chew them. You know, they don't last near as long as an antler on the ground. But females are interesting because I've seen female or doe antelope that have no horns at all, just nothing on top of their head. And then sometimes females will have, a 4 or 5 inch horn, just a mini version of what a buck's horn would look like. And they may shed them, they may not. Females are a little strange. So usually when states say you have a female antelope permit, they'll usually say its horns must be shorter than the length of the ear, is oftentimes the terminology they use, because a true antlerless or hornless antelope may not exist in the area you're at. So kind of a weird species, but bucks usually always have horns, and they have a measuring system. We're looking at how much mass they have and the length of those horns. Call them horns because antlers doesn't sound right, but technically it's not a horn either because it falls off every year.
That's absolutely incredible to I've realized they fell off, but I just never really dived into the biology of it. Do they, having said that then, because they're so almost fragile, I guess, do you often like they always, I would imagine they use them as a defense mechanism with like coyotes and all that type of thing. Not that I think deer do very much anyway. But do they actually do they actually fight with their horns, like during the rut and stuff like that?
Yeah, they fight. arguably more than any other animal that I've seen fight. They can get into some very serious fighting matches where they put their whole body into it at high rates of speed. And most of the time in the rut, they will break their horns. They'll break the points will get broken off. Usually from fighting, and then their prongs or the front protruding point on the front side will break off, or a portion of it. It's very, very common to break them off. Sometimes you'll even see an antelope that's missing an entire horn where they've hit so hard with another buck that they've popped their horn off. So yeah, but next year he may grow back perfect again. So it's not like a sheep or something where if he damages it, it's never growing back. He'll grow it back the next year. So kind of an interesting animal.
Wow, that oh yeah, that's so interesting from a point of like it sounds like they've just got a little bit of everything and just mixed it together in this vast little cute prairie animal that sprints around fighting aggressively and yeah, not a sheep or not an antelope, not a goat, just everything put into one. So um, with their with I guess when do they mainly rut? Because I know like our hunt dates start in Montana from like August 15th. Do they are they more like a deer where they're in sort of October November, or are they more earlier like an elk? When do they rut?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to other antlered animals in that after they're finished growing their horns, that they're going to rut, within a month or two after that. So most of our rut that we see here is late August to mid September, is kind of when the bucks are. They like it when it's warmer. They don't wait till winter, so they will rut earlier. In Arizona, southern country, we see the rut like that mid to late August. A little further north here in Utah, Idaho, we see rut, early to mid September. Is when they're fighting, and they're very territorial. They will run themselves just until they're sick, because they use their legs. They're focused on their eyesight. They live in typically open country where it's windy, so they can't hear very well. They don't rely on that. They just rely on their eagle eyes, and they can see very, very well. So during the rut, a buck will herd up a group of does, and he'll just chase them all over the place, running off other bucks, running off coyotes, and trying to keep his does herded up. And then he'll get his butt kicked for a few weeks. And then late season, some states will allow you to hunt into November, early December, and you run the risk of shooting a buck then that the horns will just fall off when you go up to grab it. They've started to break loose, and I've seen guys shoot them and go up and grab the horn and rip it right off the core, which they do pop off pretty easy. It's not like when you clean an antelope's skull, whether you boil it, simmer it, macerate it, however you get the horn off, once it pops off, underneath is a whole bunch of fresh hair and flesh stuck to the core, and you have to clean all of that off and carve it off. It's like meat underneath. And then you can take the hollow core or the hollow horn and put it back on the core, usually with Bondo or some sort of adhesive to fill in the open area. But yeah, very, very interesting. When you see an antelope skull with no horns on it, it looks a little funny.
Yeah, I imagine we have like tar, not here in Australia, but tar and chamois, which are obviously goat species in New Zealand, and I imagine it's similar to them where they've got sort of a little base. Oh, he's just pulling out a little demo model off the shelf here. Um, yeah, cool. Yeah, so he's just taken off. He's got a skull that I'm looking at because we're videoing. Obviously, I'm not in the US doing a live podcast, but yeah, he's got a very nice pronghorn. He's got probably six, I'd say almost 6 or so inches, maybe more, 8 inches of spike coming out of his head, which I think we would call that, like in the veterinary world, we call that the corium, which is where the horn tissue essentially grows from. It's the like the end of your fingernail, really, where it all germinates from. And that's, yeah, by the sounds of it, where all the hair and everything is produced. And then I'd love to see, because you never really see photos of them in the cute little fluffy white hairless stage with no horn. Normally you see them when they're all hard running around. I want to see the puffball stage. I want to see the winter, like, 16-year-old fringe stage of the pronghorn. No one ever talks about it.
It's kind of weird, and typically it's in the middle of winter, and when people see them, they say, "Oh, that's just a bunch of does running around, a bunch of females." Well, they might be bucks. You just can't tell. They got a little white horn at the top, where you say, "Oh, they're just young. They're just little guys," but they're not. They're just gonna grow over the next few months.
Bringing target precision to hunting camp, Option Archery makes specialist gear. Their quiverizer is one of our favourite bits of kit. This stabilizer combined arrow quiver is extremely unique, cutting weight with its clever 2-in-1 design. The Option sights are versatile in this regard also, offering both a single or multi-pin sight housing within the same sight. Shop their products today.
So with the seasons, are most of the time bow and rifle and muzzleloader or whatever else, are they sort of targeting them during the rut, or are they mainly, are they mainly sort of later season hunts after they've finished rutting? How does the seasons normally look in these states?
Yeah, a lot of seasons start earlier, with bow seasons being available in August. Some states like New Mexico, Arizona, they'll do their rifle, muzzleloader, all their hunts in the month of August when it's very hot and dry. Doesn't matter too much. It more so turns into what's the terrain like that you're hunting in? Is it going to be muddy? Is it going to be rainy or snowy if you hunt them too late? I don't think there's too much science behind the month that we hunt them, knowing that there's typically plenty of bucks to breed all of the does. You just want to hunt them when their horns are fully grown. So anytime August and beyond, you're fine. You're in the clear there. But every state's got a little bit different management on how they like to hunt them. Some states, we'll talk through which are the easiest states to get tags in, or the best states for trophy, down to some of the more difficult ones. But where they are so different, it's kind of a sought after trophy species here in the States. Yeah, it's something you can hunt every year, every other year, pretty easy. But it's also something that people will wait a lifetime to get a really good tag so that they can shoot a big one, where a trophy antelope is highly sought after.
Really? See, that just shocks me for someone like I have no affinity. Like, I'd always love to hunt them. They seem like a super fun hunt in terms of, you're more like, I don't know, hunting at the back of a truck, just sprinting with a small pack around the place, trying to or maybe even use the decoy or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Whereas when someone says, yeah, shooting a 200-inch mule deer and waiting 25 years to draw that tag, I get that. When you say it takes 20 years to draw, or I don't know, you didn't say a number, but I'm assuming it takes quite a long time to draw these antelope tags. See, for me, that just blows my mind. But obviously that's the beauty of hunting. Everyone's got their own preferences, and their own style, things they want to accomplish. Power to them. But that's, for me, because I'm actually accumulating points, and that's sort of something that we want to obviously we'll break down a bit more later on. But is it worth accumulating some of these points? And what's it? You say a 200-inch deer, for example, is that thing that a lot of hunters have in their mind, a 350-inch bull elk. What's that? That next level benchmark for an antelope?
Sure. A couple things I'll touch on there is, one reason why I think they are highly sought after to hunt is, they're a little bit easier to hunt. They're typically in the rolling hills. They're not at high, steep mountains. They can live in the mountains, but overall they're a prairie animal. They like open spaces. And if you look, James, at all the animals we have here in the States, deer, elk, whitetail mule deer, everything, they're all a little bit boring as far as the animal coloring, the hair, the pattern on the animal. Think about it. An elk, he's brown, he's yellow, he's kind of boring. Deer, he's gray, he's just boring. But an antelope has the cool face colorings, patches, spots on their neck. For an American species, it's very exciting. We don't have a lot of the cool animals like Africa with stripes and spots. And so in the United States, it's very unique as far as how pretty they are, how different they look.
Yeah, they yeah, but then for me, like, they don't bugle like an elk. You know what I mean? Like there's not that like screaming bull.
No, no,
Like that's hard to replicate with an antelope, you know. So
it is. It is. But here's what the naysayers say. An elk, a bugling elk with a bow is not that hard of an animal to kill. Now hear me out. He's got his defenses down. He doesn't really care. He just wants to look for the ladies. It's a big target. He'll allow you to get pretty close. So a lot of bow hunters say an elk, it's fun to hunt, of course, don't get me wrong, but it's not that hard to kill an elk with a bow. But an archery antelope, spot and stock, not sitting over a water hole, but true spot and stock, is very, very difficult with a bow. They just don't let you break that 200-yard barrier very easy. It's wide open. I've tried personally all sorts of different tactics, from painted decoys, cattle decoys, pop-up blinds, moving around. Like, we've all tried crazy sorts of things, knee pads and gloves to crawl through the grass. Like, everybody's tried something different to get close to these antelope because they have magnified vision. They have very high resolution. They can see very good. So it's very difficult to hunt. And I think that challenge is what pushes some people to say, I really want to shoot a big antelope, just because it is difficult, especially with a bow. A rifle, long range rifles we have nowadays, it's not very hard. It's more of just selecting to find the big one. But
how good an eyesight are we talking? Like, are we talking like you're crawling in the grass and sort of pop your head up at 300 yards and it's like, oh, Austin's back. How's it going, mate? What's happening? Haven't seen you since yesterday. Are we talking that good or what?
Oh, yeah. They've got you pegged. Any tiny little movement, they've got you pegged. And, they may tolerate you for a few minutes, but once they decide to get out of there, it's not like they run behind the next set of trees and stop. They'll run a half a mile or 2 miles away, and just for fun. They run for no reason. So it can be very, very frustrating to spot and stalk an antelope.
Yeah, right. So I imagine most of the time, because that's the thing, I guess, like that final moment with a bow too, like you're just the drawing back. I'm assuming most of these shots are going to have to be, like, they're quite a small animal, so most of these shots are going to be sub 40, 50 yards, which for me is personally a long shot in itself on a small target. But you've got to draw back, which you're pretty much saying, like, with a limb that's upright, sticking up out of the grass, and you've got to clear that, being like, yoo-hoo, hello, I'm over here. Yep, just crawled all this way for nothing.
99% of the time, they will not tolerate that. So a lot of the successful stalks in open country, you've got to have some bushes to hide behind, or you've got to have a little cut, a little draw that you can crawl down, draw, and then come up on your knees. But man, their eyes sit so far on the side of their head, they can virtually see everything, coming, even if they're not looking your direction.
Yeah. So their peripheral vision is really good as well. Then, like, if you so when's your opportunity to draw? When they put their head down, essentially.
When they put their head down, if they're looking straight away, that's ideal. But it's pretty tough to get by with anything. You may be able to get him in a group with does where the does maybe catch you, but he doesn't catch you, and he'll give you just that extra second, 2 seconds to get the shot off before they bolt. But you see most bow hunters will end up sitting over a water hole in a ground blind, just for higher chances success. They live in the dry open desert, so oftentimes water holes are a good source to ambush them, and they'll come in to get water every day.
Yeah, see. Well, hopefully, with a bit of persistence, and I've been like training on my Stairmaster. I got my pack, I got my weight. I've been, training to carry out them elk quarters. Sounds like I should have just been sprinting around in the bottom of creek beds, just like practicing, getting those ankles all strengthened up, trying not to roll them, and then just like slowly drawing my bow back an inch at a time, just like do that awkward like half squat, pop up over a little. Seems like I've been training for all the wrong stuff.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's rattlesnake country a lot of times when you're here and it's warm, August, September. There's a lot of rattlesnakes, which is fun for crawling around in the grass and, can you draw your bow while laying on your back or laying on your side or, on one knee? Can you draw your bow in that situation? I mean, everybody's tried about anything. I've tried the doe hats. They make those foam hats that you wear that have doe ears and little horns. Trying to trick them. A lot of people will flag them. They'll use a white cloth and kind of shake it at them, and it stimulates him like a turkey to, oh, there's something over there. I'm going to go run and see what it's like a bull coming to a red cloth, right? So there's a lot of different tactics you can try, but more often than not, if you're on public land and they've been pressured, their first instinct is, I'm going to run away and look at you from a mile and see what you do about it.
I'm gonna be sad. That's what I'm gonna do about it. We had one. My only experience with an antelope was that a couple of years ago with that against all odds, that tag in northern Montana. I actually had an antelope tag then too, but just ran out of time to hunt them. And my only experience was when we were scouting on public land. We we saw an antelope, which we just did not expect. And because the season dates are obviously earlier in Montana, I was like, oh, I got a tag. We should go and go for a stalk on this thing. And we were in the car when we'd seen it and it'd sort of run. And then we got out of the car and this thing was ages away. It would have been at least a mile to a kilometer. Far enough that you'd think for anything else it would be. And here's this thing just sitting on a ridge, sort of obviously irritated and stressed, just doing circle work almost, just walking around, looking at us, do I run? Do I go? And I'm like, mate, you just need to relax. This stress levels aren't good for you. You need to just settle down, go back to feeding. And he ended up just taking off over the ridge. We probably only made it 200 meters out of the car. We'd actually got out of the car and then, which he probably saw. But I was hoping, if we can get into this, into this sort of little gut, I guess, or gully, and then cut all the way up, it was going to take us in pretty close to where he was. And we got to the first little area that we could check in on him and just saw him with his little bum walking over the ridge, never to be seen again. So, but it should be a fun how it goes. So hopefully this time we can be a bit more successful. It sounds like it's going to be an awesome, fun little hunt anyway. So hopefully we can get it done and capitalize. I think it's more we'll definitely be targeting them, but if we see them as well, we'll put in stalks. But they're probably coming secondary to elk and deer, I imagine. But depending on time or that, depends on how much time we put into them.
Yeah, that's what's nice about hunting antelope is they're target rich. Anywhere you go, you're going to see them. Most places, it's not like you're just looking for the animal. It's usually, how am I going to get close enough to the animal, and is it one that I want to shoot? That makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, well, I think for us, at least for me, coming from I use South Pacific and just lump us and New Zealand together. But that's the incredible thing. It's not often driving around that you just see deer, for example, or pigs on the side of the road. Whereas because of your hunting systems and everything over there, it's nothing to go and just be driving around and see mule deer and see, even the odd elk and see antelope. Just when you're driving in to go do the groceries, you're oh, there is 20 antelope sleeping in that hay paddock right there. Whereas I've never just driven somewhere. It's pretty rare to be oh, there's 20 red deer or 20 fallow, or the other day I actually did see some deer down on the coast, but that was I was looking up on a mountain in this little cut, and I was holy shit, there's some deer up there. But I was not really intending to see them and all the rest of it. Whereas down there it's just got to try and not hit the mule deer and the little fawns on my way into work this morning. It's just a whole different world with hunting pressure and everything.
It is. It's a good add-on species. So you asked the question, should I apply for antelope? Should I build points? If that's not your target species, I would always say add on that species, meaning if you're already applying for deer and elk or something in a state, and it's just a marginal cost to add on antelope, yes. Examples of that would be Arizona or Nevada. Arizona and Nevada have great antelope bucks, big bucks, trophy size bucks, but very difficult to draw. Arizona is just as hard to draw an antelope tag as a bighorn sheep tag. It's very, very difficult. But should you pay $15 to put in? Yes, you should. It's only $15. You throw your name in the drawing, and if you get lucky, it's great. It comes down to just how many tags are available. Arizona being one of the lowest, like 500 total tags a year for antelope, and Wyoming being the highest at over 30,000 antelope tags per year. Antelope in Wyoming, it's just a factory. They breed like crazy. There's lots of habitat, and Wyoming's my number one state for those wanting to hunt antelope.
Camp Chef is all about portable cookware, without any compromise to power or efficiency. Their range of cooking options include pellet grills, a cast iron range, and portable cooking systems. For better food in the bush or at home, head to their website to check out the complete range today. Yeah, perfect. What and with the Wyoming, is that like a OTC, or is that like a lottery system? And what's the draw odds for Wyoming if we're starting there with states?
Yeah, I think even though they're there's herds you can hunt in most of the western states, antelope, outside of one opportunity in Colorado that's true over-the-counter archery, all antelope tags are by a draw only in all states. So you must go through the draw to draw an antelope tag in Wyoming, Montana. All of these we'll talk about. You have to draw a tag. Now, it might not be very difficult to draw a tag. You may be able to draw it every year, but they do manage them very carefully with a limited number of tags. Even in Wyoming, with 30,000 tags, they're very separated by each unit, season, and that's how they allocate them in the drawing.
What compared to I guess one last question before we keep going states, like compared to a public land elk hunt or elk tags where they normally talk about 10% success rates and stuff on these hunts, what's because you were doing the comparison of like how hard antelope are to hunt. Do you know what the percentages are of being successful are on antelope hunt with archery? Is it pretty similar with 10% or less than 10% or higher? Or
man, on archery alone, that's a good question. I mean, because typically on rifle or any weapon antelope hunts, we always plan for 70 to 90% harvest success. It's very, very high, and anything less than that, we're a little worried why it wasn't higher. But when you go to archery, man, so much of that depends on who has the permit, how serious are they hunting, can they, sit water over a water hole, are they just spot and stock hunting? I mean, most of the time with archery, it's under 40%, under 30% kill on most hunts. When you talk Wyoming, all the tags there are just rifle tags, and then you can hunt the earlier archery season or the rifle season, so it's harder to tell their success rate. It's not separated out, but it's still pretty high when you talk about the limited number of tags. It's not like an over-the-counter elk tag where everybody's going to go do it and there's just not enough elk. Typically, there's enough antelope for everybody that gets a tag. They're just more difficult to hunt.
So yeah, we've jumped into Wyoming there, applying there. Is that somewhere where you'd be accumulating points as well in Wyoming, or is it more, I think I've got a couple of points in Wyoming, so might need to take notes here whether I should cash them. And I think next year I should be in Wyoming hunting elk, so maybe I will cash those points in for Antelope too. But what, is there any, is it worth accumulating points in Wyoming for Antelope? Have they got big ones over there, or is it more, potentially just accumulating points so that when you want to go and hunt an antelope, you're going to get a tag as well, I guess, as part of a hunt strategy you could be looking at.
With Wyoming, it's mostly a preference draw, meaning you have to have the points necessary to get the permit. So I tell everybody to buy points in Wyoming. They're $31 every year to buy your point. That's a pretty cheap investment. And you say, what year should I go? Well, whatever year you want, you look at how many points you have, and then you pick a unit that draws with that amount of points. So there's not too much of a random element of the draw. If you have 5 points, you look at the units that take 5 points to draw, you look at the amount of public land, and then you get the tag and go. If you have 10 points, that opens up, new units that you can go to that have higher trophy quality, more public land. But if you don't have the points necessary, you're drawing dead or your application is wasted. So you might as well put in for a unit that you can draw. But yeah, there's no reason if you're doing elk or deer or anything in Wyoming, if you want to hunt antelope someday in the future, definitely build points for that every year.
Yeah, perfect. And is there much point creep going on in those antelope units, like even the lower ones that are like 3 to 5 point? Like, is there ones that are 1 point unit, or is it?
Yeah, there's 0 point units. There's tags you could draw every year. A couple things go into play there, and that's just how much public land there is available. And we're not seeing too much point creep. The biggest thing there is the amount of tags, and that goes up and down based on the winter kill. So Wyoming has a bad winter, like we had 3 years ago. It comes in and it kills off 50% of the population. Antelope just cannot survive the snow very good when the snow gets deep. So it takes them a couple of years to bounce back. And so when the tags increase, we'll see easier draw odds. So it's not creeping up where it's so far out of your way. The biggest thing there that they changed recently is they have 2 splits of draw applications. One is a $340 license. It's called the regular draw. And then the special draw, same license if you get it, but it's special because you paid 4 times as much money. So you paid $1,200 for the same tag, and that gives you better odds. So they figured less people will pay $1,200 for an antelope tag, so it's easier to get those tags than the regular price. If you're willing to spend $1,200, you can get a much better unit with bigger bucks than the same guy who's going to only pay $340. So that's one decision to make.
And how do they is that where with the special, and because it's the same with elk, so is that where they've allocated like, just say there's 100 tags in a unit, is that where they've allocated like 20 to the special draw and 100 to the 80 to the regular draw? How do they work out, like, or is it like you get an extra 2 point, like how do they work out
it's a 60-40 split. So 60% go to the regular guys, to the poor guys, and then 40% go to the special, or the guys willing to spend more money for the same tag. 40% of those are saved for them. So you just have to look at the draw odds, how it shakes out, that it's usually much easier to draw if you're willing to pay special price.
And then I guess if there's not that many people keen on using buying a special tag, do those tags then just get chucked back into the regular draw, or does that ever happen?
Typically doesn't happen too much anymore. They'll give all the tags out, but they'll go to second choice or third choice on special applications before they'll give them to the regular draw. So it all kind of flows through the process, but demand is high enough that you won't see that too often.
No, cool. So what's the next state after Wyoming for getting a tag?
Yeah, we'd go right next door to Montana. Montana doesn't have quite as many antelope as Wyoming, and they definitely have more private land to deal with, but the opportunities are great. They give over 25,000 antelope tags every year, and it's one of the cheapest, probably is the cheapest antelope tag still, at just over $200 for the license if you draw. Everything's in a draw. They separate the archery antelope draw from the rifle antelope draw is how you can think of it. So the archery permit can usually be drawn every year, every other year. So you call it every other year to 3 years to get the archery license. And then the rifle tag, just depends on what unit you want. There's some rifle tags that only take 1 year to draw, and there's some that take 5 or 6 years to draw. So that's where you decide what kind of weapon am I willing to hunt with? Am I going to be there for another hunt? Then I would try to get an antelope tag, on that same year. If you find out you drew a deer and an elk license, then you can put in later for that antelope drawing by the 1st of June, and then you can, potentially double up. And plenty of places to hunt. The antelope typically aren't as big. As you go further north in the western United States, the antelope will be a little smaller, just harsher winters. The further south you go, the bigger they get, with the biggest antelope being in Arizona, southern New Mexico, down further south. They just have better growing season and not as harsh of a winter.
Well, we're actually looking, we haven't booked our flights yet just because the season opens earlier than the elk and deer, and we did have a couple of days, but which we were going to allocate some to scouting anyway, but we don't want to go a whole week early for deer and elk and scout. But if we get these antelope tags, then we can go and chase some antelope for a little bit. After just finding out we've got these tags in Montana, we're going to head down a little bit earlier and try and get in on the action there. Should be some fun, warm running around hunting. So I'm very, very excited. They just seem to be everywhere. I guess a good question to have is I feel like with deer and elk, private property, and this is maybe just an ignorant observation for me, but just driving around, you see a lot of antelope. In most people's paddocks, there are antelope, sort of thing that do cropping or whatever. Because of that, are people more if you just rock up and you're like, hey, my name's Austin, I'm from Utah, I'm here with my kids, we want to try and hunt an antelope. We can see that you've got 50 in the 5Ks of, or whatever 5Ks of roadside that I just drove. Can I come on here with my kids and hunt? What would most private property owners sort of say to that? Are they still pretty closed off and not really welcoming the competition and other hunters? Or because they're just so many, compared to elk, I'm not seeing elk just sleeping on the side of the road, for example. I understand, that there's not that many, but I mean, it depends. I also don't want to shoot the biggest antelope. I just love to shoot a antelope. So I guess maybe there's that trophy potential competition too. But what's the chance of getting on some private to hunt some antelope?
Most of your chances are much higher than for deer or elk. Most ranchers that have their fields and their agriculture crops, they despise antelope. They typically won't leave their fields and go to the mountains at all. They'll just stay there and eat all of their hay, eat all of their crops. So you usually have a better chance of knocking on doors. And in Montana, same with Wyoming, they have a lot of their hunter management areas or walk-in access areas where ranchers have said, hey, my lands are open, sign in on the box, and you can walk into my area. Those are very common across agriculture stuff in Wyoming and Montana, just to get hunters allow access. And the state will actually pay them based on how much utilization there is from hunters going on their land. So yeah, I would say that's why antelope are more tolerated, is because we have hunting programs to get people on there to hunt.
Yeah, which is incredible, and I'm very jealous of it. It's something we don't have here in Australia, really. But I was hoping that was going to be the case, because I just, like I said, just driving around, you'll go from out the back somewhere to go, and you drive through the lower country to get to the shops or whatever. And you just, 50 meters off the side of the road, oh, there's a buck just bedded, chilling, pull up, take some photos, does not care, and then, you'll be going through and you'll just see this mob of 15 to 20 does just sitting there on a crop, and you're just surely these guys are calling farmers to come and shoot these things. Because I know if we had deer just sitting on an oak crop, if we had deer in Australia sitting on an oak crop, or pigs destroying a sorghum crop or something like that, or roos destroying a crop, we get in there and eliminate the problem, put it that way. Whereas there's not much you can do. If you see 20 elk on a crop, you're just thanks, mate. They're just sort of stuck with what they can actually do, I guess. But yeah.
Specialising in high-quality supplements and nutrition, from electrolytes and hydration add-ins to their wild bars, Atlas Wild helps to fuel our outdoor adventures. Their Regenerate lineup has been a game changer whilst hunting up north in the heat and humidity. It's perfect for those on the quest for hydration when losing lots of sweat. With grape, lemon lime, blue raspberry, and orange flavours, there's something for everyone. Another favourite of mine is their Fusion lineup. It's my go-to for rest and recovery towards the end of a day. It's perfect for a big pack out. Now available in peach iced tea and lemon lime flavours. When shopping on the Atlas Wild website, be sure to use code TWIN10. That's TWIN 10 numerically for 10% off your next order.
It's tough. Yeah, and they reproduce quickly. You know, we didn't talk about how old an antelope is, but it's definitely different than deer or elk, where you want a deer or elk to be, say, 5 or 6 years old to hit maturity. An antelope, he's going to peak his horn size at 2 years old. So oftentimes a 2.5-year-old buck or 3-year-old buck is a very big buck, and he'll actually regress after that. He may grow a little bit of mass, but he's not going to grow much length. If he may lose length. So we've done a lot of studies recently, Fish and Game, and they've actually lowered that management age to where they're managing for 2-year-old bucks on most of the landscape. They grow their horn length very quickly, and it's oftentimes you can shoot a Boone and Crockett buck that's only 3 years old. So it's half the age of deer, a third the age of a big elk. So herds can rebound very quickly. We're not so scared of shooting too many antelope because they reproduce quickly and they come back. Just 2 years later, you could be looking at big bucks again.
See, that's wild because you'd think with every hunter stuffing up a stalk, that's where they learn, okay, no, I don't go into the white flag, and I, don't trust the cute little ears coming through the grass because it's not actually a doe, it's Austin. And, all these other all these other features where you've got this disproportion where it's okay, he has his biggest horns when he's the dumbest, which just is that's so, everything about these creatures are just so unique, aren't they? Yeah, that's crazy. Whereas you don't see elk, elk starting at 400 inches when they're a spiker size and going backwards. Yeah, you shoot that big old gnarly buck, man. It's going to be 20 inches long and as thick as your leg.
Yeah. It's definitely more similar to a goat. A mountain goat will do similar. He'll grow 70% of a mountain goat's horn in his first year and a half. So he grows all that length right out of the gate, which is common with horned animals. And then they'll just add on some more mass at the base and a little more length. But the majority of that growth happens when he's young. So the conditions of the feed really affect how that animal's going to end up. If his first 2 years of life is his best potential, after that he's just kind of junk.
I wonder if people in Australia, we have feral goats which are half wild, half domestic. Some people muster them when the conditions are right and the price is good, and we ship them normally to Europe, we ship them to for meat, or we also a lot of Arab countries and stuff like that for carcass and everything like that. There's huge markets there for them. So I wonder if it's the same here, where we've definitely never put the money into studying horn development and how it grows. But just from a hunter's observation, they definitely grow significantly. The young billies in the first couple of years, and then it does really slow down from there. So I'm assuming it'd be the same where nutrition in that first couple of years is going to be key to whether they become 40 inches is the thing that we talk about here in Australia, whether they're going to reach that 40-inch mark or not. But what would be, so is there anything else to add on to chasing one in Montana, or do we want to move to the next state?
Not really. I think that best opportunity there, like we said, is the archery only permit. That's pretty easy to get, $200, and definitely add it on if you're going to come to Montana for anything else. Like you say, the August 15th is the opener. So it opens early, and you can hunt before your elk hunt, during your elk hunt, after, whatever might happen.
Who's next on the chopping block? Where are we heading to next on this
I'd
Antelope Roadshow?
start coming a little further south to Colorado. Colorado is the only state that has true over-the-counter antelope opportunities left, and that's because it's archery only, so it's a bow hunt, and you can hunt about 70% of the state is open, most of which has grasslands, more open prairies in the eastern portion of the state. Yeah, there's private land to deal with. You may have to, bounce around private access. You may have to ask for permission, but it's definitely a viable hunt to hunt antelope. It's going to cost about $550. So if you compared Colorado straight across to Montana, I would probably try Montana first, but it's another chance. Maybe you're going to Colorado for another hunt and you want to go explore and chase antelope. It's true over the counter. You can just buy the license when you get there to the state. You don't have to draw. Some of the better units that have more public land or the rifle hunts in Colorado, you do have to draw. So you're going to have to apply in the drawing. And they do have a point system where you're going to have to build a few points. So it becomes a little more of investment. I would only apply for Colorado antelope if you were already doing other species there, deer, elk, whatever. Then I would add on antelope. It's worth the $10 to add antelope to your application. But if you're not applying for anything in Colorado, I wouldn't do it just for antelope.
Yeah, perfect. Who's up next?
I wanted to mention, like you said, 200-inch mule deer, right? Like you said, that's like the holy grail, like everybody's dream bucket list, whatever. And for an antelope, it's usually about that 80-inch mark is what everybody's looking for. 80 inches, 82 inches. And they measure antelope much like a sheep or a horned animal. It's length plus 4 circumference measurements plus the length of the prong, that front protruding portion. And you don't get a spread credit. There's no inside spread, outside spread, nothing, because antelope can be all funky in their horns. The horns are removed from the skull. You can measure a horn without a skull, right? Because it's just based on the length of that black sheath, not so much where it comes out of the head or anything. So usually that 82-inch mark is what most people are going for, just to give them a judge of what they want. And all these states can produce that. Colorado struggles out of the ones we talked about so far at producing 80-inch goats, just genetics, feed, everything like that. But any state can produce a Boone and Crockett quality goat or Pope and Young goat if given the right circumstances.
Yeah, I like. I'm not gonna lie, those demon Hellboy looking ones that like come out on a 45. They're like, rather than just being straight up like an ET alien,
Yeah.
they're like sticking out like real on an angle. Those are pretty cool looking. So yeah, they're just unique.
Yeah, some people's goal with antelope is to just shoot. Yeah, what they want to shoot is what we call a freak or something freaky. And I know antelope hunters will just drive around looking for something that's weird, a horn that drops or turns sideways or curves back into his head or just something weird. I don't get into that as much personally, but to each his own, right? Some people just want something weird to put on the wall.
Yeah, I'm assuming is that sort of what we like in deer or elk? I guess we call that like velvet damage, where they damage a point or whatever when they're in velvet, and then it's like bent down or whatever. Is that the same with antelope, where when they're in the cute little furry growth stage, they knock it on something and then it kicks out, or is that like the pedicle or the skull plates like on an angle, or how does those like weird conformations come out? I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I knew more about that. All the weird ones I've seen, that whole core or his pedicle is facing a different direction. And it looks like he grew that way from the time he was a baby. So I don't know if it's something that's injured in utero or if they could even injure that horn, that core is so close to their eye socket and their eyeball and their brain. It feels like it would be pretty hard to damage that pedicle and change the orientation without severely injuring, the spine or the brain. Not like it's not like a sheep where he has so much more extra skull to work with there. I don't know how they do that. I mean, they are just so fragile. Like, this is one of my wife's bucks. This one I showed you earlier. But if you can tell, his whole face is crooked. See how his whole nose like comes to the side? Like, what in the world did that? I have no idea. Was he born that way? I mean, no two antelope are the same, but there's not a lot to work with up in that base area. Like, it's going to damage his eye sometimes if he. So I don't know. That's my final answer. I don't know what causes that.
Yeah, sick. No, that's cool. So we've moved on from Colorado. Who are we going to next?
I'd go to Idaho next. So they don't have near as much terrain that's good habitat for antelope. They only give about 4,000 antelope tags a year. But it's a random draw. There's no points. There's no building points, no system at all. So if you already have a hunting license, which is about $200, then I would consider hunting antelope in Idaho. You can put in for the draw to try to draw a really good firearm permit, or you can put in for the archery hunts, which are very easy to draw. Oftentimes a guaranteed draw for archery. But I would never tell a guy to spend $200 on a license that's non-refundable just to put in for antelope. If he's already putting in for elk and deer, or he has a bear hunt or something else planned in Idaho, then it's worth it. But until then, I would say go to another state. It's better use of your money.
Yeah, no, cool. Appreciate the insight.
Yeah, I don't want to waste anybody's money. It's a long ways to come. But if you're already playing in a state or you're already spending the money on a license, then it might be worth it.
Well, that's it. The difference between driving from, if you've got a tag for Idaho, for elk or something like that, for example, the difference to driving to Montana or, Wyoming or something like that and having a tag up there, I mean, you're going to burn that in fuel anyway, so you may as well just get the tag in Idaho and go on the hunt, especially if it's a, good draw rods and you're going to get a tag. That's sort of the main thing. At least you got a tag in your pocket. Who's next up?
Yeah, these next few states are trophy antelope states, or they typically produce the largest antelope. And that's going to be Nevada will be next. Nevada has some really big bucks, but I would say the same thing as Idaho. If you're already applying there for deer and elk or any other species, then definitely add on antelope for $14. Put your name in the hat for a really good trophy unit, and it would be worth the trip. The same thing goes for Arizona. Arizona has some of the biggest bucks in the West for antelope. It's $15 to add on if you're applying for other species. If you're not applying for Arizona for deer and elk, do not apply just for antelope. Like we said, it's just as hard to draw an antelope tag in Arizona as a bighorn sheep tag. So they're not good standalone states. It's more of an add-on state. If you're already applying, do it as well.
Yeah, perfect. And is there, I guess the need, like, is there landowner, like if someone wanted to bypass and shoot a 80-inch antelope, just say, what systems or pathway would you, like, is there landowner tags, or are you better, like, can you just get a general tag and then just go and try and scout on some private, or what would you be recommending there to try and go and shoot a really big antelope if that was someone's dream?
Yeah, most states don't have landowner antelope tags. The few that do, the best opportunity out of all of those is New Mexico. That's the state I would talk about next. New Mexico still produces some of the biggest antelope. It's a cheap tag, but there's landowner tags, and there's private land only, over-the-counter tags. So the best way, if you just say, I just want to hunt antelope once, shoot a 80-inch big buck, and be done, New Mexico is your state. You've got to pay for a guide. You got to pay for access, but it's a true, landowner tag or over-the-counter tag for private lands. So you can just buy it and go. And that's what we recommend most people do. You can buy landowner tags maybe in Nevada, Colorado, but it's better just to go to New Mexico for that.
We all know that when it comes to great tasting coffee in the outdoors, you look no further than Dog and Gun Coffee.
Their preloaded drip filters are renowned for taking cafe-grade coffee into your hunting camp. But your favourite flavours can also be enjoyed at home with their whole bean variety. Use code TWIN10, that is TWIN, 10 the number, to get $10 off your first order. And is there any other, like, I don't know, we talk about, like, is there, Mexico you mentioned had antelope, but other than those sort of western, I imagine they're like a plains animal, so they want big open spaces to run around and evade predators and that type of thing. I imagine they're not getting too far east and they're not getting too far north, like up into Canada or anything like that.
Yeah. No, they will hunt them in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. They will do it. Same thing in Canada. You have to hire a guide to hunt there. Everybody does. So you might as well, if you're going to do that, hunt a different state. I think hunt a state with a little better trophy potential, like New Mexico. If you're going to go a little further east, of course, the Midwestern states are full of antelope. From North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, they all have antelope. Then they kill some good ones, but those states are primarily dominated by private land. So I would say you have to decide, am I a do-it-yourself antelope hunter or am I going to pay a guide? If you're going to pay a guide, we can look at those states, and then you shop the outfitter. You're shopping the land that they hunt on and the size of bucks they kill. And there may be a good opportunity there to just book a hunt. But more often than not, people end up in New Mexico on a guided hunt. Guided hunts anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, and you can just pay your fee and go on a short 2 or 3 day hunt.
Yeah, cool. And in those outfitted guided hunts, is mainly spot and stalk, or are you mainly sitting water?
Everybody's going to do spot and stalk if you're hunting with a firearm. If you're hunting with a bow, then they'll decide, but most of the time they'll put you over a water hole. You know, antelope, they're typically real skittish, real cagey around water. That's just their vulnerable time. So outfitters will put up blinds, build little hides that are more permanent to get the antelope used to that structure. You know, the day before the hunt, you can't just throw up your ground blind. That antelope's going to be like, that wasn't here yesterday, buddy. I'm little leery about what's going on in there. So those outfitters will put up water hole blinds all over the place. And if you're a bow hunter, they'll typically put you in there and say, hey, these bucks have been coming into water. They come every day. Sit here, try not to make any noise, and shoot one out of the blind if you're a bow hunter. If you're a rifle hunter, they want to drive around in glass and just do spot and stalk.
Do you ever, is a tactic that anyone's tried going out and chucking up 10 blinds on all the water holes you don't want the antelope to go to and then just sit somewhere behind a bush on the one that you do want them to come to?
Man, people have tried everything. I know a guy that he buys a whole bunch of coyote decoys, like foam archery decoys that look like coyotes, and will go put those by each water hole that he doesn't want them to come to. People get very creative. I know some guys that hunt off horses. They'll just walk behind their horse out there and try to get close to a herd. Cattle decoys.
Does it work?
There's those mirror blinds. Have you seen those? They're like a mirror shield that you hold in front of you. It's like a shield, and it's a mirror that's tipped down so it reflects the ground. So as long as you don't shine the sun into their eyes, they essentially just see grass moving towards them because you're hiding behind this mirror. That's been popular. I mean, sky's the limit. You can try about anything.
And what's the ethics? Like, I don't know, for me personally, like using an elk decoy, for example, has this like weird connotation, but I see people using those antelope ones religiously and being like, you always see the two dudes, especially, like in the middle of nowhere with an antelope decoy, like walking across this hill. Like what's the ethics and the feel? Like, if you see someone that's shot a good antelope behind a decoy, are you like, bit of a, I don't know, I don't want to cuss, bit of a soft cock, I guess. Like, what's the vibe from like other hunters in the US? Like, are you like, oh yeah, well,
Not with antelope. most of the time when you talk about it, you see someone with a big buck with a bow and arrow, you're like, oh, did you sit over water? And if the answer is no, that you're a sissy if you sat over water. But if you stalked them with a decoy, without a decoy, with a flag, a mirror, it's usually seen as pretty respected, just because you got creative, and everybody knows it's not that easy to stalk them. But if you sat over water, you cheated by sitting over water.
Yeah, okay. Righto. Looks like I'm getting me some cute little doe ears.
But anyways, fine.
I'm gonna get some cute little doe ears, I reckon, for Aiden, who's going to be sitting behind me with the camera.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And I'll be in front with the buck, like gesturing up, like, yeah, man, get away from my girl. And then hope he walks in.
You've probably seen there's those shoot through decoys that you strap to the front of your bow, so it hooks to your riser, and then the arrow comes out of the middle. I mean, everybody's tried about everything, but the one that works is the one that you're successful with. So
yeah, crawling through the dirt for hours. Sounds like I need to add gloves and knee pads to the and elbow pads maybe to the list of.
If you plan on stalking, you are so much faster and more effective. And I'm talking some big knee pads, not the soft ones. I get the ones because you're going over cactus, you're going over rocks. I get like the flooring, like if you're a tile setter, and you lay flooring for a living in houses, those are the kind of knee pads you want with big, thick leather gloves. You can crawl much better.
Get the old cricket knee pads where it's. Have you heard of the sport of cricket?
Oh, yeah. Those might work.
Foot and a half long. Cover from your knee down to your ankle.
It's the hot time of year, so anything you put on is, man, it's just gonna make you hot and sweaty. But that's how it goes.
No, it reminds me of I went and hunted black buck in Argentina, and it sort of sounds like that, where they're just moving all the time, but there's just like not a lot of cover, so you end up crawling. But the problem is everything is so spiky over there, and we had nothing. So for like months after the trip, I just remember pulling out like what's that little like spot in my palm, and then you'd pull out like a 5 mil or a 7 mil bit of spike or thorn that's just been sitting there festering. That sort of just like pops out like a pimple after you dig it out. It's just, yeah. And same with your knees, like your knees and shins are just covered in these thorns. But yeah, I haven't been back there to sadly chase them, but that was a super fun hunt. At least those things stop and sleep for a bit by the sounds of it. Do antelope sit? Do they stop at all? Like if you see them bed, like how long do you have before they get up and run away from you?
Oh man, they will bed, but they like to bed where they can see and where they can see everything coming. And during the rut, it's tough because those bucks are so irritated. They're always up walking around. They don't run for the shade. They're fine just standing out in the open all day. So that makes them tough.
Sounds like a fun hunt. Was there any other states or opportunities that you wanted to add in and talk about for pronghorn?
No, I mean, we covered the majority of them. Obviously, if you're going to shop for a guided hunt, that's a little bit different route. And then I would always look at the state you're planning on coming to hunt something else and shop for opportunity that way. Because, Wyoming, I put on everybody's list that's interested in Wyoming. Then all the other states kind of depends on which state you're planning on coming to for something else and set up your hunt from there.
I guess one state that we didn't mention that should be close to your heart was Utah. Is there, if you're going over hunting a general tag or OTC tag for elk, is there antelope tags there? And would you be getting an antelope? Do you hunt antelope in your own state every year?
No, so everything in Utah for antelope is a draw. So you have to apply in the drawing. There's no over the counter. There's no easy to get tags. We just don't have as many antelope tags as these other states. So that would be an add-on state as well, like Nevada or Arizona. If you're already applying in Utah for general season deer, for limited entry elk, then yes, I would throw your name in for antelope, build some points. But it's not something you can just come here and do when you're coming for general season elk, because everything has to be drawn.
Perfect. Well, hopefully we've given the listeners a bit of insight into going and getting an antelope tag, adding it on to a hunt that they've already got planned, or giving them a bit of guidance if, their trip and dream of a lifetime is just to go over there and shoot a big antelope, what the opportunity is like, and a little bit of guidance on how hard it's going to be with the bow, trying to either convince one of these things to come in and check you out close enough, or how stealthy you're going to need to be to get it done with the bow. But I look forward to the challenge, and hopefully we've helped everyone just get that little bit closer to getting over there and chasing a pronghorn for themselves in the future. So thank you once again for your time, Austin, and we'll catch you on the next podcast in the series.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Embark on an unforgettable journey with our fully guided Chittledeer hunts, catering to both rifle and bow hunters. Spotted Safaris is conducted in the heart of the Basalt Wall region, North Queensland, Australia. We specialise in catering to all experience and fitness levels of our clients, providing trophy stag chittle hunts as well as beginner focus adventures and meat hunts. With over 15 years bow hunting Chittledeer, our guides know these animals and the grounds they hunt like the back of their hands. With chances at a mature basalt boar as a bycatch and some spectacular wildlife viewing, there really is something for everyone at Spotted Safaris. Inquire today by emailing spottedsafaris@hotmail.com or simply send them a DM on their socials.
Well, that was another unreal podcast with Austin. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge. It's crazy to see how many options there are, and just shows you guys, if you are going to the US, even for a family trip, how easy it is with a little bit of planning, a little bit of guidance, how easy it is to, add in an antelope tag and go for a really fun hunt. We can't wait to actually hunt them ourselves. So it should make for an awesome adventure. It's one of these ones that, you can hunt from a truck. There's plenty of opportunities. There's heaps of antelope from our experience, like everywhere you drive, you're seeing them. So, if you're not chasing that huge trophy, then it should be a really, really good hunt where there's plenty of game, and, you're running around trying to use decoys and, get in front of them and spot and stalk, and, just can't wait. But we're going to jump into our FAQ segment of the podcast. So if you guys have any questions that you want us to answer on the podcast, please email us with the subject line FAQ at info@twinelements.com.au, or send us a message on the Twin Elements Aidan Doomstis Outdoors or James Doomstis Outdoors Instagram account, and we'll get to your questions there. But the question we've had this week, which we'll actually do in a podcast shortly, is what do you think the costs are of going on a US trip for an elk? So we're going to break this down a little bit more in detail in the future, just because there's so many variables with, even just the hunt and the tag itself, but then going into, you're going to be based out of, accommodation. Are you going to be coming out of, a motel every day? Is it going to be a backpack hunt? Do you need to borrow a car over there, or do you know someone you could potentially borrow a car from? How much backpacking gear have you got if you are going to be a backpacking trip, or do you need, to go and buy all this new gear? But very simply, a tag in the US for elk nowadays costs roughly $1,000 to pretty much $1,000 US. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. So there's already sort of $1,500 to $2,000 there, depending on which state you're going to get the tag in. The next thing's flights. So we're just in the midst of booking ours, and from the previous experience over the last couple of years, depending on how long you're going for and how flexible you are with dates and whatnot, it generally works out to be about $2,000 to sort of $2,600 dollars there for your flights. That's from Australia. I'm not really sure from New Zealand, sadly, but I imagine it'd be pretty similar. Then food and shopping and that sort of thing. Like normally I go over there and sort of do a big shop at the start of the trip, going for sort of 3 weeks, and that's buying like jet boil fuel, and you got to buy new like bear spray tins and all that type of stuff. I normally spend about $1,000 straight up on sort of dehydrated meals and stuff. And all the rest of the little gear that you might need to upgrade something. You might need to get some, used to get the Outdoor Edge interchangeable blades because we couldn't get them in Australia until Venture started stocking it, and just a heap of little things like that. So I guess there's some consumables in that, but it's sort of that big shop. I also find it hard to sort of quantify, is it an expense in the sense that like a dehydrated meal, yes, it's normally probably $20 for the ones that we get, the Peak or Mountain House ones. But I mean, there's people in the world that just spend that at every meal here in Australia or New Zealand anyway, at a serve or at the pub or whatever. So it's sort of hard to quantify the food bit. Yes, the gear, you've got to include that, but it also, whether you should be adding that onto just this trip or sort of, putting it across the whole. But as a general, if you want to buy all the backpacking gear, like a really good backpack, for example, there's probably $1,000 nowadays. A sleep system with a good bag, a good tent, depending on how hard you're going in that. I mean, there could be a couple of grand there extra as well. And really then there's not a heap more. There's a couple of little items, like I'd probably recommend a Garmin InReach. I'd probably recommend, like a SteriPen or something for purifying your water. A couple of dry bags, like all those little things, trekking poles. Like there's a heap of little things that get added in there, which once again probably should be their own podcast topic, but whether that should be added into the cost of this trip or just, the cost of going on backpack hunts in the future, I'm not really sure. But the next one would probably be the rental car. So if you hire a car over there for about 3 weeks, just sort of grabbing, like a pretty simple ute, which is normally not my go-to. It's sort of about $1,500 a week Australian. And so generally speaking, I sort of like an SUV, like a bigger four-wheel drive, just so I can, put the seats back and sleep in it if I really have to, which I've done a couple of times before, but also just for storage, like parking it up at the trailhead. It's so much easier than if you've got a ute that doesn't have a back on it. It just becomes a bit of a pain in the ass, and all the US guys seem to love that sort of system, so it can be a bit harder finding a car, but it normally works out about that $1,500 Australian per week for a car. So, if you're going for 2 weeks, there's $3,000. Fuel and accommodation when you're over there, the fuel's not too bad in price, so pretty similar to what I'd say here, which, sort of probably comparable. The accommodation part can blow out and be pretty expensive just with the exchange, where, a motel room might be $180 US, so you're looking at like $300 a night. Generally speaking, last trip we just camped out the whole time, and grossly, Aiden and I didn't shower for like 26 days, so keep that as a little secret. Don't tell too many people. But that was pretty nasty. It's pretty good to peel off the layers of sweat and just dirt after that. But it was worth it. It was good. The first trip, I was going in every sort of probably 5 to 6 days out of it. Like I'd go camp out, move around, and then go and find a room. Little pro tip secret: try and find somewhere that includes breakfast. Do that early, and then go in there and just raid the little buffet brekkie bar. Get all like the little butters and jams and all that type of things that you can chuck on your you sort of out, like take it out there in the backcountry with you and just suck on butter and bulk up while you're out there. Putting it on croissants and those type of things. But yeah, that was probably good. Probably made it a bit more worthwhile when you could get brekkie and like have a big feed and all that type of stuff, rather than just getting like a crappy motel room for $300. So as you can see though, if you're going to be staying in a hotel room like every night and hunting from there, it does blow out quite quickly. And you almost recommend probably looking into talking to someone and organising a guided hunt or something like that. And then obviously if you're doing guided hunts or staying in motels or doing horseback, like those sort of hunts can really 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 quickly blow out. So as a whole, huge variety I guess in how much an elk hunt costs in the US. But I'd probably say for most people that wanted to do like a predominantly backpack trip, and potentially if there was two of you, so you could share the car expenses, like you could well and truly go and do an elk hunt in the US for $10,000 for a couple of weeks, mainly living out of the car and sort of backcountry, I guess, like which is sort of where you want to be, chasing the elk, with a couple of times coming in having dinners in town and, you know, whatever, going and cleaning yourself up in a motel. So yeah, it's a good guide. I think most of our listeners is probably that in that demographic. If you want to do more of a guided hunt or one out of some, you know, lodging and accommodation, a motel or whatever, I think just for value for money, you're probably better off talking to the Huntin Fool team and getting some guidance on outfitters there, unless you've got some previous knowledge or know someone that's been with an outfitter over there. Just because there is such a variable level of experience, and you just want to be making sure that you're going with the right person. So, but yeah, the price obviously dramatically increases once we talk about guide and outfitting and horses and all that type of stuff. But that's a very quick overview, mate, of what it roughly costs for an elk hunt. We'll go into like a huge. This is going to be a podcast topic in the future. So, especially with Aiden and I booking all our flights and trips and stuff now, so we'll be able to share that. Yeah, super detailed, I guess, in a couple of weeks with you guys after this mini series that we're doing. But I just want to have a couple more wrap ups. So we're really, really appreciative of everyone going and buying our prints online, all you listeners, and we appreciate you guys. And we know it's you because you've been using the Twin Elements podcast code, which gives you 10% off your orders. So I'll say that code again, that Twin Elements podcast. So that gives you $10 off, 10% off your orders. And I know that you guys have been ordering and using it since we started giving it to you guys. So we really appreciate you guys giving us all the love and support through the podcast, our loyal listeners. It means the world to us. Another thing on the calendar that's coming up is the 1 year reunion, or the 1 year opening reunion of Venture Hunting and Outdoors. So that will be in the Springwood store in Brisbane. So that's going to be going on the 9th and 10th of August. Aiden and I will be there. So please come down, have a yarn. If you've got any more FAQs, that we can chat about it then. If not, you can, we'll just talk hunting, we'll talk gear. We'll be well and truly prepped for our US trips before then. So hopefully, see you guys all there. But that is the 9th and 10th of August. I'm sure they're going to have a heap of giveaways, a heap of prizes. It's going to be an awesome night just within the hunting community. So, make sure to get down there and come and check it out. But once again, thank you so much, guys, for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast, reviewing and rating the podcast. It really does mean the world to Aiden and I. And hopefully you guys are getting plenty out of this mini-series. It's something a bit different, just trying to open up the eyes a little bit of some of the hunters over here and show what opportunities there are that lie further abroad, I guess, and how you can go on potentially your own, elk or antelope hunt in the future. If you guys have any more questions on that, please send them through, because we'll probably end up doing a FAQ at the very end of the series, just because we've had so many questions about it all. Once again, thank you guys for all your love and support. Aiden and I really do appreciate it, and we'll catch you next week on the Twin Elements podcast.